Hello and welcome to Hacking State. This is your host, Alex Mershak. With me today is Patrick Casey. Patrick is the writer and the voice behind Restoring Order. Patrick, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. So you're an interesting figure. You're also primarily an interviewer, like myself, although you've written for numerous publications. And I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about the cultural state of right-wing politics in the US, and especially sort of different branches of what you would call the new right or various forms of alternative conservatism that, seem to be enjoying an ascendant moment right now. But also that comes with, that victory sort of comes with a cost in terms of
Sure.
people's cohesion and kind of jockeying for position. And so I was hoping we could get into that a little bit today because you're very much in touch with the zeitgeist on these things. But to start, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your political background. You describe yourself, I think, somewhat ironically, as a centrist or moderate paleoconservatism.
No irony there. I'm
Rather.
a moderate paleoconservative. Not a centrist, though. Not a centrist.
Not a
If I've ever
centrist.
described myself
Centrist is a
as a centrist, that would be done ironically.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your sort of ideological, political background, where you came from, where you are now, and how you got there.
Sure. Well, I grew up in the suburbs in Northern Virginia, and the default back in the, not late night, 90s, early 2000s was basically everybody out there was most people were kind of Republicans, and even the Democrats weren't, super far left by any means. So, but to be raised, in a Republican family didn't really mean much necessarily. It was just kind of the default. So I never really had. I do think that I was raised Catholic as well. That probably had some impact on me. I'm sure if I was raised by communists, I don't know what that timeline looks like for me. But the point being is I never really was conscious of being conservative, of being right wing. I was into I discovered poll, in college and stuff, and there's a lot of wacky stuff on there. And although I guess not now, because apparently,
4chan?
apparently 4chan's dead or something. That's the last I saw.
Yeah,
That's
they
crazy.
they got infiltrated and hacked, and I guess it's gone. So
Wow, that's crazy. Well, regardless, I found a lot of stuff on 4chan on poll that I found disagreeable. A lot of stuff was interesting. Talks about immigration, demographic change, these sorts of things. Some suppressed biological truths, and I was studying anthropology in college, so I found that very interesting. Getting a different perspective on things than I was seeing in class.
were you studying like cultural anthropology or evolutionary anthropology, or was it just a general?
So at most bachelor's degree programs for anthropology, you're going to be exposed to the breadth of anthropology. The four subdisciplines created by Franz Boas, which are archaeology, biological anthropology, cultural, and linguistics, I believe, is the fourth one. Yeah, you're going to be exposed to all that. So I didn't really specialize. I was planning on doing archaeology after I graduated, but I got involved in, that was
And other
2016 content
things.
creation. So here we are.
Okay. So
But,
you're browsing r/poll. You're discovering some interesting facts about human nature that
Sure.
that are not in line with your anthropology degree. Where do we go from there?
Well, I guess I found, it was really 2016 in Trump. I found, the termed the dissident right, the online right then as well. A lot of people who have not really stood the test of time. A lot of people who have vote Democrat now because they got so tired of the right. But there were a lot of interesting voices back in 2016. All of those people were not as insane back then. I'm not going to bother naming names and so forth, but yeah, so I was interested I've been a Trump guy basically since he came down the escalator. And, I've always been interested in the deeper discussions, the deeper explorations of the ideas that I don't want to necessarily say MAGA is based on, because that would imply that, everyone in MAGA is into these things. Trump is consciously. Now, Trump's into a lot of stuff like immigration restriction. He has very good instincts, but more the conversations and the ideas created by the Trump phenomenon. And okay, this guy's talking about immigration. Well, even if he's not, saying everything there is to say about immigration, the fact that he came along and he really cleared the way. He paved the way for these sorts of discussions to be had. So that's one of the things I like about the online right is for better or for worse, anonymity allows people to say just about whatever they want. Now,
Hmm.
back in the day, you had to worry a little bit more about getting suspended than you do now. But generally speaking, the ability to speak freely in times of soft tyranny, soft totalitarianism, where it's not really necessarily illegal to, question certain things and so forth, but there are immense social consequences for doing so. Means that the ability to have these discussions under I say anonymity, but really under pseudonyms, the way the founders did is pretty important. So that's how I got into all of this, and then here we are, almost a decade later, and it's been a fascinating ride. So
Yeah, I remember 2016, especially through 2020, pretty vividly. And this there was this attitude of kind of the anons against everyone else that was really enjoyable to be part of as a young man, I would say. Um, and I remember like all the honkler memes and the the Pepes and all it really just had this very irreverent energy that honestly wasn't there this time around. Things were a lot more serious, but it definitely spoke to something that was unmet in terms of, I would say, particularly young male energy here in the United States. And you're right that Trump was really the only person trying to address a lot of what people viewed as systemic problems that the Republican establishment, as far as I had remembered, had never really wanted to seriously deal with things like immigration, for example.
yeah, well, people forget how bad it was prior to Trump. There are people that I encounter online. They made a Twitter account 3 years ago. They were in like middle school or something when Trump came down the escalator. So a lot of people do forget, or people like me who just weren't really following electoral politics all that much prior to Trump, people forget how bad it was before. So when Romney was running in 2012, he made a comment during one of the debates about self-deportation. The question was pertained to legal immigration. He said, "Well, I think we can encourage self-deportation," which, of
Mm.
course, by today's standards, is an incredibly benign, and insufficient, ultimately, solution
Yeah,
for
why don't you
the
see
problem
yourself
of
out?
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's gonna be part of it. You when you start that's just gonna happen naturally when you start deporting, when you start making it clear that, like, you shouldn't be here, that we do know that self-deportation happens naturally. Now, obviously, we need to do more than that. Of course, that's what Trump is fighting for, but the point is that when Romney said that in 2012, he faced an immense amount of opprobrium. Not he received it from not just the left, but also the right. Reince Priebus, then the chair of the RNC, referred to his comments as heinous. So that was the furthest you could go. That was even beyond the pale as far as immigration rhetoric in 2012. And then flash forward to the 2024 election, right? Little over a decade later. And, at the RNC convention, you have these mass deportation signs that are being passed around. So it is remarkable how much things have changed since then, and it's important if people are ever feeling down about the state of the country or think, you know, there are a lot of positive developments, right? There's at least we have a fighting chance now to save the country from, utter ruin. Whether or not we succeed remains to be seen, but there are many reasons for to be optimistic.
Yeah, I would say I feel kind of the same thing, and I want to ask you a little bit about your kind of response to this lately and what you've been focusing on, because to me, I felt like the victory in 2024 was an opportunity to kind of focus on building instead of just the rhetoric. And so, in a way, my positioning, and this is just me personally, I'm not, I don't have anything to say about what other people are doing, but was to kind of pull back a little bit from politics and especially from the culture war side of things. And I'm curious as to what your view on that is. Just because what I saw happening in the aftermath was like the beginning of the fight um, to sort of establish oneself in the power matrix, especially around DC. I know a lot of friends who moved to DC very recently, um, and people here in Austin and people elsewhere. And the explicit goal of that was to work for some government agency or take part in some
Sure.
part of the administration.
Yeah.
And they're looking for power, or if they're not doing one of those two things, they at least want to be close to the feed. And that if that's someone's prerogative, this is your opportunity to do it. You should take advantage of that. But for me, I felt like what was happening was the beginning of what people jokingly refer to as the circular firing squad, especially on places like X, where a lot of the especially right wing influencers began to just attack one another because the common enemy of the left being
Mm,
in the position
right.
of power had been removed. So what's your thoughts on that?
So the question of pulling back from politics proper, that makes sense. There's a lot of important stuff that needs to be built in terms of the private sector. I'm not involved in tech whatsoever, but I'm aware of, yeah, sure, there are right wing tech people building interesting things and so forth, and maybe people like that can breathe somewhat of a sigh of relief that Trump is in office, and maybe for them it's time to go work on this, that, or the other. I mean, I do political commentary, so it's every day logging into Twitter and seeing what's going on. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There is the online, just the nature of online communication is really, especially when it comes to influencers and clout and so forth, definitely incentivizes and rewards, right, PvP, just attacking other people, and so you do see a lot of that. And yeah, you're right. There's probably been an uptick in that since Trump is in, because it's, yeah, when you don't have a common goal, when you don't have a common enemy, oftentimes you turn on one another. And in fact, you saw a lot of that during Trump's first term,
Mhm.
in the online right. It was Trump was in, and then people started disagreeing whether or not what he was doing was good, and there was a lot of backbiting and crazy things that that sort of went down. But at the same time, some amount of that is has to be expected, just given again the nature of the medium, and also the types of personalities, frankly, that are particularly driven to seek attention, power, money, whatever they hope to get from becoming someone on the internet. So I guess it's something that might fluctuate based on external circumstances, but it's always kind of going on to some extent there.
Yeah, well, actually, I want to linger for a moment on the attention seeking thing because I think this
Sure.
is a general problem. It's a temptation that a lot of creators have, and does come with the territory in terms of people's natural inclinations. If anyone is making content on the internet, especially using their own face and name, they are seeking attention of some kind. Now, whether that is pathological, I think has more to do with the kind of behavior that they're engaged in rather than the attention seeking itself necessarily.
Sure.
Um, but what do you? I mean, what is the motivation for you? Like, did you just were you at a state where you're like, well, I've already done these things as a young person. I've kind of thrown my hat in the ring. This is going to be my path. Did you already know that you wanted to do something like this? You said that you weren't that political prior to 2016.
Yeah, no, I had no political ambitions whatsoever. I just made a Twitter account almost a decade ago, and I was like, "Wow, this is really interesting. This is really cool." I was enjoying all of the things I was learning. I was enjoying dunking on libs, owning the libs, so to speak. Still am to this day, and yeah, I mean, it's just kind of developed from there. I've done all sorts of stuff. It's been really a situation where, it's just whatever is. I think I've settled into just like plain content creation. I have, a podcast, I tweet, I write, and that's basically it. I mean, there's a nice scene here in DC and in New York, so I'm always meeting people and traveling and so forth. But um Yeah, no, it's been yeah, I mean, I don't want to say like once I, publicly outed myself as a right-wing thought criminal, there's like no other option. I'm sure I could probably go do something else, but I really don't want to.
Mhm.
If someone offered me $1 million a year to go do some boring office job, okay, that might be a little tempting, but when it's making roughly probably the same amount of money doing something, far less interesting, then yeah, it's really no choice. I care about the future of civilization and, what's happening in the country more specifically. And like, this is the place to be. This is, I've fallen into a niche. Certainly we need more people doing other things than just influencing, but I'm here and not to be self-aggrandizing, but I do meet people that work like in the Trump administration, like not super low level either. And they're like, oh, I love your Twitter accounts. I'm like, all right, well, it doesn't always feel like I'm doing anything. I'm just tweeting in my living room or something. But to have people that are like fairly high up saying stuff like that, it's okay. Well, the message is getting to people in power. That's not that overlap between like the actual right and the dissident or the online right, whatever you want to call it, didn't really exist back during Trump's first term. I mean, sure, people running things in Trump's first term, they were kind of online, but it wasn't anything like the way it is now. So that's been a very positive development and certainly motivation to keep tweeting. So
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I feel very vindicated by the direction of a lot of my me and my Twitter friends in terms of influence over the new administration. I have to say, and again, I'm similar to you. I don't have any real connection to any real power, but it's good to see these ideas coming to the fore, and also all of the haters getting proved wrong. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your project then, restoring order. So does it have a particularly well defined ideological agenda? What do you mean by restoring order?
sure. Well, restoring order, just in a general sense, I guess could refer to restoring order to a more traditional right wing order to the country. We're definitely never going back to any previous era of America. Some elements on the right fantasize about the 50s, maybe the more normie cons, they fantasize about the 90s now. That's the new era of pre woke, Garden of Eden or something of the sort. Well, we're definitely not going back because circumstance, the different factors that define an era, a decade, demographically, economically, technologically. I mean, we're not going back, and I think that we're actually accelerating a little further than we think into wild, uncharted territory. I'm a big fan of Nick Land,
Mm,
although some kind of begrudgingly, no offense to him, but some of his visions for the future are kind of horrific. Like it makes for great science fiction, but then you're like, oh wait, I'm gonna have to actually live through this, or my kids will. I don't know about all that. So but when it comes to restoring order, I mean, look, a lot of the problems, I don't come at it from a hyper ideological perspective. I've been influenced by uh, you know, yeah, yeah, actually, the paleocons, Gottfried in particular, have been influenced by reactionary thought. I've been influenced by tons of random people on Twitter. Big fan of like Bronze Age pervert, and I don't
mm.
consider myself like a Nietzschean vitalist, but it's an interesting perspective, and he definitely has many other insights to offer aside from that more specific way of viewing things. So I try not to be too rigidly ideological. Paleocon works because if you look at what the Paleocons were into, it's like pretty stuff that like most people on the right would agree. It's like based, but it's also not just totally delusional and outside of the realm of reality, or they're not proposing like ghoulish solutions to the problems that we face that no one actually wants, so like aren't even going to happen anyway. Um, and that's generally like the ideological perspective there. As to what restoring order means, though, it's generally just, you can look at any issue, immigration, crime, race communism in federal institutions, and this stuff just has to go, right? We've got to send the illegals back. We've got to limit immigration. We need law and order on the streets, regardless if some groups are affected more than that by others. Okay, well, that's colorblind justice, right? We're not targeting certain groups for, because of their race or ethnicity or religion or anything. But the wokeness, where the wokeness comes in, is they say, Oh, well, this group's getting arrested more than this other group. That's racism. No, that's just, differences in behavior. So, and really, I guess you could really, if you had to narrow it down to one thing, it's regime change in a peaceful, nonviolent sense, because just the way the system is set up. You saw that what little, what modest good Trump did the first time around, was undone, like, within the first week of Biden being in office. All of the border stuff, whatever else. Of course, the Biden administration had the gall to go on and claim that, blame the border crisis that it specifically created and enabled on Trump, which was, it did that multiple times, ridiculous. So we need to restore political order to America, and ultimately, what that means is a change, a top down change. Now, whether or not, we don't really know how that might happen. I think Trump, or Trump on steroids, a decade or two from now, I don't know, is probably the closest that it would look like. But restructuring the power centers, and probably using the office of the presidency to do that, because as Trump has proven, that's like one of the few institutions that you can get like a pretty right wing guy in, and it's a pretty powerful institution. It's not all powerful, but I think what you're seeing now is that Trump has a far better idea of what can be done, the extent to which he can exert his will, and the American people's will, because we voted for him, on the country and all of our institutions. Again, whether or not he succeeds at that remains to be seen, but there's definitely more, more thumos this time around. So, again,
Yes.
reasons to be optimistic, but I'm not saying it's 100% going to work out. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, well, when you described to me a lot of the problems with our state of disorder, I'm reminded very heavily of Sam Francis's term "anarcho tyranny," and I feel like
Oh,
that's just been the mo of the regime throughout my entire life.
yeah.
um, and yeah, it is kind of peaceful regime change. I guess you could say that it's underway at the moment. I mean, we'll see how much they can get done between now and 2028,
Yeah.
and what happens then. But um, things are looking hopeful. I agree with you. I'm also quite optimistic. Um, what what I'm unclear about is, again, whether the alliances that have been made on the right are merely alliances of convenience. And that's actually something that I'm very concerned about. As someone who is kind of closer to what you would call the tech right, um, and swims a lot in that kind of milieu, the kind of Teal, Yarvin, Urbit kind of side of things. I get the sense that, especially a lot of the Silicon Valley figures that started to back Trump really only in the last 6 months of 2024, leading up to, yeah, leading up to 2024, we're only doing so out of convenience. And you already sort of see them pulling back in terms of a lot of the discourse, especially around immigration, where they're saying, oh, we need to get our H-1Bs, we need our engineers, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, I almost feel like this is um, going into a place where the the conservative establishment, the right wing establishment, may flinch, and I'm a little bit worried about the Trump administration and particular elements of it doing that in order to appeal to sort of the money, the donors, and the
Hmm.
support coming from the tech right.
On which specific issues, like immigration or?
Immigration, especially. I would say trade policy more generally as well.
Okay. So you think that you're worried that the Trump administration is maybe gonna back off from the tariffs, because the tech right doesn't
Yeah,
really want
I I
that?
I could just see that there's a lot of pressure on that side of things.
Sure.
And there's this group that are there was this kind of like big tent MAGA vibe that came about, right, in order to win this election. And
Yeah.
that included a bunch of sort of centrist rights, even some like non woke liberals, as well as libertarians. And all of those groups and of course traditional conservatives as well, who have sort of what I would say are outdated ideas about how things should work. Um, and all of those groups are not exactly down for the actual MAGA agenda, the MAGA agenda as such. And so I guess I'm just voicing that concern that
Yeah.
that
Well,
these programs are maybe threatened by that.
yeah. It's not an unwarranted concern. The tariffs are an interesting one because I do think Liberation Day was kind of a misstep. Even if people supported the policies, kind of hard to defend the messaging. You had Besant saying, "Oh, these are temporary, just so that we can secure deals." You had Lutnick and who was it? Navarro saying, "No, no, no, these are permanent." Like insanely high, crippling reciprocal tariffs. By the way, when Trump when he held up the sign, those when he said these are the tariffs that they have on us, those weren't the tariffs that they had on us. So it's not very confidence inspiring to have such a radical policy being made, and you're getting totally contradictory messaging. And yeah, so I've always aspired since the beginning to be supportive of Trump, offer constructive criticism, um, you know, but I'm never going to be a cheerleader. And so there were people that took issue with me the first administration for being like too critical of Trump. Okay, well, obviously the first administration didn't fully pan out, so I don't think that was wrong. Um, the thing with with the tariffs is like if Trump is doing a lot of great stuff. The border crisis is basically over. I mean, of course, the future administration could restart. He basically stopped March. The border crossings in March of 2025 were down 94% compared to March of 2024. So that's incredible. Now, the mass deportations, they're taking more time. He's done dozens and dozens of things to try to get the ball rolling on these, and it is a lot harder to get people out of a country than it is to get them in. So unfortunately, I mean, again, if he fails at doing this by the end of the 4 years, okay, well then you're going to have to give him a bad grade on mass deportations. But when he's showing signs that he's absolutely fighting and he's taking the necessary steps to pull off this massive operation, okay, well you got to give some credit where credit's due. Now, a lot of great stuff happening when it comes to race communism, when it comes to anti-white DEI, affirmative action. I mean, he's doing stuff that he didn't even promise on the campaign trail, like rescinding Lyndon Johnson's executive order that mandated that uh, government contractors carry out practice affirmative action. So there's a lot of great stuff that's happening, but the flip side of that is if in some other way Trump drops the ball, and if it's possible he could do great on those things and just terribly on something else, then that is going to make the cause of like anti-wokeness of a right-wing restoration all the harder. So that's I'm not saying that there were a lot of hysterical reactions to Liberation Day. I was kind of mildly critical. I said, well, let's wait to see how it plays out. Okay, Trump, to his credit, has kind of backed off from some of this. The tariff thing isn't over, so it really remains to be seen. And when you had Besant saying something like, "Oh, we got to get over our addiction to cheap goods," it's like Americans voted for cheaper stuff because inflation was high, and Trump explicitly campaigned on that. So I'm not saying Trump is necessarily dropping the ball, but we're just going to have to see how things play out. Now, this is kind of long winded, but back to your questions about the tech right. If they're kind of urging Trump to slow it down with the tariffs, well, I kind of agree with them. I'm not against tariffs overall. He did tariffs on, for example, Chinese steel in his first term, and I thought that was pretty good. Even the Biden administration agreed; they kept it. But when it comes to, I guess immigration would be the biggest concern with the tech right. You saw the whole H-1B debacle. It was really hard to get these people to say how many immigrants they actually wanted. There have been times I've advocated for zero immigration, net
Yeah.
negative, net zero. Yeah, and I would support all of that, but it's probably not going to happen. So I think
We need a
fewer.
10-year moratorium, Patrick.
Yeah,
We need 10-year.
well, I
That's
would support that.
that's unironically something that I would support. Simply
Yeah, yeah, I would.
and it's not even malicious. People hear that and they think I'm just being a troll or something. But actually it's pretty logical the way that I think about it. The reason for a 10-year moratorium is that there's all kinds of systemic problems that you can't actually deal with as long as you're using
Right.
immigration as a salve
Yeah.
for doing that. And so you actually need to like get your feedback loops set up properly in terms of demographics, in terms of labor supply, in order to actually fix those problems on a fundamental level. And if you cut off the flow, you have to cut off the flow for like a significant period of time because the I d the bloat that you fill the system with has to work its way through for those incentive
Right.
structures to get realigned.
Yeah.
And so this wouldn't be a permanent thing. I'm not against certain types of high skilled immigration. I think there are definitely some individuals and some industries that where it makes sense to have exceptions. Um, but in general, the system has been abused, and you need to reset things. And so that's what I think is actually a very reasonable policy.
Yeah, yeah, not a permanent policy. I agree. I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but I just don't know if it's going to happen. I'm going to
Oh no,
continue
I
pushing
I don't
for
think
it.
it's
Yeah, and I
pragmatic
know
from
you're
a
not
political
predicting it,
point of
but
view.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, but I think ultimately fewer, even if we don't get that, which is the ideal, fewer but better as an immigration platform. I think we could drastically reduce the number of people coming into this country legally and ensure that only the best and the brightest, which is what the people in the pro H-1B camp at least claimed, such as Elon Musk claimed that they were interested in. Elon Musk is going to Europe and he's saying, demographic replacement is the death of the nation. These sorts of things. Yeah, that's great, and it's incredible to see the world's richest man saying this because
Mhm.
again, you didn't have this 5 years ago. We don't even have to go back to 2016. But something happens with America. People have their business interests here. People also just kind of even on the right, have a tendency to conceive of America as it's just a place for the best and the brightest of the world. Anyone who wants to come here and work, I think that is like kind of an Elon Musk tweet was like, anyone who wants to come here and work. It's like, okay, that's actually should not standards for American citizenship should be a little stricter than just like wants to come here and work. That's
Sure.
basically everyone around the world. So yeah, but we haven't really had, and this is something I was trying to point out back then. Yes, I was pushing back. I was on the anti H1B side of things during that debate late last year. But the thing that I or some people were using it as an excuse to be anti-Trump, anti-Elon, that wasn't the right move. The real the real takeaway there, and the thing that I tried to remind people of is, well, as long as people aren't managing immigration policy, and they're not able to successfully lobby for these changes, then it's not the end of the world. Like Elon Musk, Doge is not doing immigration stuff. So I haven't seen any pushes for like massive expansion of legal immigration. Now that doesn't, us not getting any restrictions on legal immigration is disappointing, of course, but maybe disappointing isn't the right word. It isn't ideal, but Trump like wasn't really promising that. So while I would like that, while he endorsed something like the Raise Act, which would have cut his first term in office, it would have cut legal immigration in half. This time around, it kind of just wasn't promised. So I would love to see action there. At the very least, if it doesn't happen, it would be very disappointing for that to be the result of the tech right, like stopping a plan that the administration was working on. We'll see, though.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see how that all shakes out. But I would say I think I'm generally optimistic. I think that at the end of the day, there's still a lot of patriotism there, and at least you can have conversations with these people.
Yeah.
So we couldn't really do that before when we were just hostages. Uh, so we talked a little bit about sort of your background and how you grew up and where you come from politically. Um, you said that you're Christian. Are you a Christian nationalist?
I've never really used the term. I've got friends, people I like online who use the term. I think that's fine. Um, it's just, yeah, I've never. So I was raised Catholic, but then as a teenager, I kind of rebelled, and I don't know, everyone else was like a lot of millennials. It's just something that we lost, growing up or never had, and yeah, I was into like science and stuff in college, philosophy. I still am, and so the religion coming back to Catholicism was something that came after, like years after being like red pilled and becoming active in right wing politics. So the point there is I had already developed my political views and kind of approach to things prior to there's definitely a time and place for religious considerations. It's not like religion has no influence on or should have no influence on someone's politics, but I think a Christian nationalist, like, they're putting that front and center. That is like the center. It just isn't the center of my political worldview.
Mm.
So, and maybe that has to do with the fact that, yeah, I developed my political views before becoming whatever. Also, some people have like very specific meanings by Christian nationalism. I see a lot of Protestants using it, and they're like arguing with their, um, pastors over it. And I don't want to say it's entirely a Protestant thing, but most of the main proponents of Christian nationalism are Protestant. They're people I like. They're people I could get along with just fine. But that also isn't. Yeah, I'm Catholic, so that's just. I feel like it's almost not even. It's kind of happening over, in friendly territory, but kind of far away. So.
So, what I'm getting from this is that the Vatican should be running America. No, no, no.
I wish the Vatican were that great and that free of problems where I could actually consider a thought like that. But for any of my Protestant friends, you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, we don't need the Vatican running America
Yeah,
anytime soon.
it might be more gay that way. I'm sorry, Catholics. Um, a lot of my friends recently, this is just a trend that I've noticed in my circles, are either they're lapsed Catholics that are getting back into the religion, back into the faith, or they are converts. I know numerous people who recently converted to either Catholicism um, or Christian Orthodoxy. I myself have done neither, but I'm curious as to whether what you think about that trend. Is there a sense, and I guess I'm asking you specifically about the view from the ground in DC. Is there a sense that um, a lot of the young people, particularly on the right, are moving closer to these organized religions?
Okay, so within conservative circles, you do see that. I don't think in the broader country. I think Pew recently came out with a study showing that, yeah, secularism continues to be on the rise. For every Christian convert, like something like hundreds of Christians leave the faith, and that is very sad. But it is within politically active circles. Yeah, there is a lot of interest in more traditional forms of Catholicism. I've got a lot of Protestant friends as well. I think it's rare to see someone go from Catholic to Protestant, but there is certainly conversion from like atheism to Protestantism. So yeah, it's going to be the kind of thing that even if it continues to decline in, overall in American society, certainly in Europe, other Western nations, it's not like in terms of the right and, especially like the younger conservative, like activist political operative class, it's not going anywhere. So it's still going to be a force in society. I think the fact that Biden had to at the very least pretend to be Catholic goes to show that religion it's still an enduring force, and a lot of that is due to inertia. So we'll see what it's like when you know it's the millennials are the oldest living generation. Yeah, it's really hard to see. I mean, you also hear these anecdotes like the younger Catholic priests that are becoming that are going through school to become priests and so forth. That they tend to be more conservative, more traditionalist. So you do have some even though you have an overall trend towards secularization that continues to happen, right? It's been going on for a while now. You can find some niche spots where like the opposite is happening. But as to whether or not that changes, I don't know. One thing I've been considering is just think maybe part of living in a technologically advanced society makes belief in religion harder. Maybe it makes living a traditional religious lifestyle more difficult. Certainly hope that isn't the case. But the trend of secularization yeah, it's a pretty big phenomenon. And Western civilization is based on Christianity, not only Christianity, but that's been like an integral part. So yeah, just like Nietzsche said with the death of God, for that to disappear, Nietzsche viewed that as a problem. He wasn't a fan of
Mhm.
Christianity, but he's like, okay, well, this thing like held our civilization together, and now it's like disappearing. So what the hell do we do now? Um, So yeah, we'll see. Like many things, kind of hard to predict the future, but I'm not really predicting there's going to be a huge. I don't think that secularization trend is going to totally reverse anytime soon. It might be, generational procession. Gen Alphas decides they need it or something. We'll see. I don't know.
Well, it seems to me like the real issue is that technological society probably just makes things too easy for us.
True.
Yeah. Um, so talking about Gen Z for a moment, there is a trend, especially among the younger half of Gen Z, towards more conservatism. I forget which poll I saw recently, but particularly the young Zoomers and probably Gen Alpha is going to be the same. Are are moving more rightward. Certainly more than millennials, like ourselves. I assume you're a millennial.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think about that trend among Zoomers, and is that reflected in your audience breakdown?
I think my audience tends to be late 20s, early 30s.
Mm,
So kind of older Zoomers, younger millennials. Um, the Yeah, it is very interesting. I think younger people are subjected to obviously to different pressures, different experiences growing up in today's world, and um, I think it's normal for younger generations to think, man, we've got it. The other generations had it way better, right? Like we got the raw end of the deal. Um, you know, Whether or not that's actually true is a different thing, but it's kind of a subjective perception. I would argue in many ways, probably not all, but in many ways, yeah, younger generations now they're facing some problems that people didn't have in the past. So these days, yeah, the left has been in power. The left controls most major institutions. So if the perception is, man, we've got screwed over as a generation, well, there's going to be that youthful, rebellious energy, and it's these days it's like it's Trump. So, what you do see, which is significant to note as well, is there is a big, right? There are obviously left wing forms of grievance, right, where you can become a Bernie Sanders supporter or something, and you blame, oh, everything's so bad because we don't have free healthcare, right? So it can manifest in different ways. But I think what you see, and not just in America, but across the Western world, South Korea, even a more glaring, a more egregious example of this is there's a gender divide. The women are saying, "Oh, well, of course things are screwed up. Yeah, misogyny is out of control, and we don't have free healthcare. And the fact that I could, murder one of my unwanted children at any point in time, that the fact that that's threatened is like why I have it bad compared to my parents' generation." Whereas men are more likely to be, yeah, into right wing stuff. Oh, we've got problems with immigration and crime and anti-male, anti-Christian, anti-white stuff. So sorry, ladies, but you're wrong, and we're right. It's so obviously plenty of great women, right of center too. But yeah, if you look at, I think it was Financial Times that published some pretty good graphs on this. Yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty clear now. Now you have in countries like South Korea like an extreme gender war, and
yeah.
that's really sad. And whether or not we end up there is another thing that remains to be seen because that's going to, electorally offset a lot of the benefits of right wing, young men becoming right wing, and it's really gonna hurt things that are already hurting, like marriage, family formation, natalism. So, hope for the best, I guess, but yeah, it's not looking good in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Texas, and I don't get the sense that the gender divide is a huge deal, but I'm also self-selected into, like, communities that are already kind of based, and so any of the women that I talk to on a regular basis are sort of, at least if they're not themselves that political or ideological, they're at least okay. They're down with the program. There's a certain level of tolerance, I would say, if not enthusiasm in some cases. But yeah, I think it's a general problem, and I hope that it doesn't exacerbate the sex divide. But what I would say is that, you know I started college in the Obama years, and my sense, well, first of all, is like, yes, I understand. Like, at a certain point, you're just like, I'm tired of being told that I'm the problem, right? I'm tired of race communists and feminists telling me that I'm the problem.
Right.
But also, like, the sex war was really engineered. I mean, it really was like a top-down engineered program
Yeah.
going all the way back to the origins of feminism, but then kind of instituted by like literally the State Department. um,
Yeah.
and uh, the Obama like campus tribunals and things like that. And I feel like some of these problems might just be self-correcting. In terms of, you made a little jab at women briefly there, and that was kind of funny. But like, I actually don't think that women in general are that ideological. And I think that, actually just most people are not ideological.
Sure.
That being said, um, but if the cultural trend, if the ascendant cultural milieu is moving more rightward, if it's more high status and the affiliation with power is more towards the right, I think a lot of those problems between men and women basically take care of themselves. That's my intuition. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think that there is something to be said for once the pendulum swings back the other way, certain problems kind of get solved on their own. I certainly hope so. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe once women, realize that every now and then you'll see TikToks where women are like, "Man, I hate my job. I hate doing this. Like, I wish I could just be, taking care
Right,
of
right.
kids and what." Not even necessarily like, I'm trad wife LARPing, but some women certainly will, like others in their generation, look back and see, either a realistic or a romanticized version of the past, and it's yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think women can work and have a career. You can, take some time off work for while your children are young. There's a work from home. There's a lot of options that I don't think that women necessarily have to choose between not working ever, not ever having a career, and having children. So, but yeah, the birth rate question is a is a real rabbit hole to go down. I don't know if there's an easy solution for that.
So you talk to a lot of different people all over the right, on Twitter and elsewhere. Who are you most excited to talk to?
In terms of past guests or like the type of person I'm the most excited to talk
That you
to?
haven't spoken to yet?
Okay, who would I like to talk to? Um, like upcoming guests or someone I would love, like if I could interview
Uh,
anyone?
Take that in either direction.
Okay, gotcha. Who would I enjoy interviewing? Yeah, I've always thought like who's the biggest name I can interview, and it's got to be Trump. But
Oh, okay.
he also does so many
Sure.
interviews. I almost wouldn't. He would probably have to be careful about what he said because I would love to subject him to like a dissident right interview where it's like, okay, well, we're going to talk about, um, you know, maybe just like some stupid, like goofy ideas. Like I'll explain to you, the CEO is a monarch and like, what are your thoughts on that? um, yeah, I don't know. Trump would be interesting for sure. Who are some other people? I don't know. I mean, because you got like in terms of bigger names, a lot of them just really aren't interesting. Like you could look at Fox News personalities, and yeah, a lot of them I probably wouldn't be that great of a discussion.
Hmm.
Um, I've wanted to have Yarvin on the show for a while. He's kind of hard to pin down. Oh, okay. Here's an easy one. I want to have Nick Land on the show,
Oh, yeah,
and
of course.
he doesn't do interviews very often, and when he does, everyone listens. So it's like, okay, you got your bi-yearly Nick Land interview. It's 4 hours. You'll probably know some of what's being discussed if you're familiar with his views, but there's always like an update, some new thing that he's received via channeling, from the future, some new insight. So I'll go with Nick Land. I can answer that one conclusively.
Okay, okay, great. That's a great choice. I was a little surprised by the Trump thing just because I get the sense that Trump's like frame of reality is so strong that it'd be very hard to get him to kind of play ball with some kind of, even wacky thing. I could be wrong. But
It's hard to say. He might. I mean, I think it'd be funny at the very least if I'm
yeah.
explaining to him, a no holds barred Trump interview where he could just say whatever he wanted and just like pick his brain on like some more out there, like, Trump. Yeah, I know about HBD, man. I know if you've at least heard that these studies exist. Like, what are your thoughts? But you're right. It would be kind of hard to pin down in a sense. And as long as he's president or whatever he is, for his bombast and his over the top comments and so forth, they're not all calculated, but there is a calculation there. Like there's if you think of all of the stupid things and extreme things Trump could say in so many situations, like he knows just where the line is and he'll like step over it a little bit. Him at the what was it, the Black Journalists
Oh, yeah.
Association or whatever. Like he was being pretty offensive, but he wasn't really being there was a whole, like, other level he could have taken it to, which obviously it's a good thing he didn't. But yeah, he knows where the line is and he doesn't cross it. But I would like to hear his thoughts on just, random dissident right talking points and, maybe some facts, some realities that are suppressed and, maybe just pretend not to know. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm hearing this for the first time. So, uh, but we'll go with Nick Land. So
Yeah.
hopefully that works. I've DM'd him. He's told me yeah, we're working on it. Maybe I can be one of the 2 interviews he does, next year or something. We'll see.
Good, good, good. I hope you get him out. I hope you get him out of hiding.
Yeah.
I would love to talk to him as well. But
We see you tweeting, Nick Land. We know you're
yeah,
out there,
we
buddy.
know you're there.
Yeah,
um,
can't hide.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, that would be a fun interview. What are you most excited about in the near future, the near term, in terms of policy, cultural changes?
Well, I'm excited for the to see how the Trump administration goes. I feel like this has been the main story for like the entire world, basically. Um, it kind of felt like just tuning into the news and whatever else. There wasn't really a grand narrative for the country, for there wasn't a hero, or depending on, where you're standing, a villain. Trump gave us this narrative, this story that was like mythic. And, for a while under Biden, it's like there were people after the 2020 election were like, there's no way Trump's going to win again. There's no way it could happen. People are saying there was no way any Republican could win again, which was ridiculous. And I did push back against that. Well, look who did win again. It was a Republican. It was Donald Trump. I mean, just an incredible story. So I'm just excited to see how the administration plays out. And again, I don't want to sound overly, um, optimistic or naive. I acknowledge that there's a lot on the line. We talked about that earlier. So, it's kind of like I would like to see a good conclusion to the Trump story. I would like to see him pass the torch on to someone like JD Vance is probably the most realistic bet, the person I would go with out of all realistic options. And I would like to see, a greater growth for the right. I mean, there's been a lot of positive stuff. It's not just electoral. It's just the right wing ecosystem has grown so much. There's all sorts of interesting things happening offline. There's a lot of idiocy from like the earlier dissident right days that people just get now. Like that's if you were to propose doing like a rally or something. It's stupid. What are you talking about? Or, we should like incorporate these ideas that, clearly are not going to go anywhere. We should turn up we should make it a million times more radical. That's how we win. No, no, that actually isn't how it works. Although far be it from me, to tell, people on the internet, anons what to say. I think the anons that follow me kind of get this. There's been a lot of A/B testing. There's been a lot of trial and error, and I'm excited to see where the right goes. So hopefully nothing happens to totally like ruin. I don't want to sound like I'm too worried about this happening. I'm not one of these hysterical people that's like Trump. He ruined it for the anti-woke movement. But yeah, again, there's a lot on the line. So I'm excited with a slight bit of nervousness to see how this story concludes.
How the story concludes, yeah. Well, I basically agree. I think JD Vance is the most likely contender for 2028, and I hope that they retain power because if they don't, then there's a lot of very bad things that could happen, and some of which will likely happen. That being said, I would say that I think I agree that the right this time is a lot more prepared and a lot more adapted
Oh yeah,
to the environment, and I think it's healthy. Overall, there's a lot less fooling around with dangerous, counterproductive ideas, and a lot more gamesmanship, I would say, in terms of their approach to things, and that's good to see, and it's
yeah,
heartening.
absolutely.
Um, all right, Patrick. Well, this has been a fun interview. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Sure.
Where can people find you, tune into more of your work, see more of your interviews, and what can they expect in the near future?
Sure, they should go to patrickcasey.com. They should put in their emails, subscribe to get updated when I've
Yes, you must
written.
subscribe. Yeah.
Must subscribe, that's right. Um, what do I have in the works? Well, just more interviews. I've got some interesting ones coming up. I'm trying to write a little bit more on the Substack. I usually write for, various like conservative sites, but trying to offer that a little bit more. It's nice just being able to put something out without having to wait for it to be. I understand why sites, they got to stagger the stuff they put out. So yeah, I'm on Twitter as well. I'm on X as well at Restore Order USA. If people want to give me a follow there, subscribe to me on Substack. Those are the two main places.
Patrick Casey, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.